Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Well, we've only got a couple episodes left. We're starting to wind down our series on OCS360, the new cloud service from Horner. And today we've got a very interesting topic. Here it is. Rule chains in OCS360. So what are rule chains? Well, we're going to answer that today, but it's a powerful feature in OCS 360 that we think you're going to like. Now, today we're just introducing this new feature to you, so we'll give you some functionality today or some how-to today, but in the future, we'll give you more and more information so you can do more and more advanced things using rule chains. All right, without further ado, let's break down today's topic. We're going to start with our one-slide review of OCS 360, and then we'll be right into the topic. What are rule chains? What are common uses of rule chains? And we'll be demonstrating those to you. Once again, this is just an introduction to rule chains. We'll be giving you plenty of additional content as the months proceed. Okay, before we dive into rule chains, let's bring in our special guest, Mr. Don Clutterbuck. Don Clutterbuck is back again. How are we doing today, Don?
Great.
Now, today it's all about rule chain, and I've heard you describe rule chain as kind of the Swiss Army knife of OCS 360. What do you mean by that?
Well, as with a Swiss Army knife, it could be a screwdriver, it could be a corkscrew, it could be whatever you want. Same thing with the rule chains. It allows you to do certain things based on information coming from a device or an asset, right? So if you have a very complicated scaling routine or something like that, or you want to send specific messages based on certain values, the rule chain will allow you to set that up in a flow chart type, organizational chart type thing. And so it just allows you to do more complicated things or processes on your data.
So what are some examples of some things you might use rule chain for?
Okay, we actually have been using a couple of rule chains in our beta forum, and a customer needed to scale some raw data coming in from the device, but also wanted to log that scaled data, right? So the raw data comes in, it does a math routine on it, and then because we're using a rule chain, you'd be able to say, okay, take that scaled version and log it to the database.
Yeah, so one thing that's great about rule chain is it's so powerful. Today, really, we're just introducing it to, to the audience. And we're going to be doing a very similar example to what you just mentioned. So thanks again, Don.
Right. Okay. Have a great day.
Let's get started with our one-slide review of OCS 360, the new cloud service from Horner. It's supported currently by the Canvas and the Prime series, and those controllers can push data to the cloud, the OCS 360 cloud, using a special included and free version of MQTT. Now, OCS 360 as a cloud service currently has three core functions: data recording up to 5 years, dashboarding, and alarm annunciation and notifications. And over the past several weeks, we've shown you how to do all of these things. Once again, OCS 360 is supported by the Prime and the Canvas controllers and is free for the first 90 days of use. So you can sign up for OCS 360, use it in its full capacity, and then after 90 days, you can decide, do I want to cancel my subscription, or do I want to go ahead and continue this great new service? So that's your option with OCS 360. All right, now on to today's topic. Today, we're introducing you to rule chains. So what is a rule chain? Well, a rule chain is logic that's written in a node-based programming language that is executed by a rule engine in the OCS 360 application. If you go to the rule chains section of OCS 360, you can see the root rule chain, which is included with OCS 360, and I've got it there on the screen. And once again, today we're just introducing rule chains. And what can they do? Well, we're going to cover that next. So again, why are we even bothering talking about these rule chains and what they are? Well, because there's a lot of advanced things that you can do with rule chains, and we're going to give you more and more information as the months go along. For instance, you can manipulate incoming messages, okay, that come into OCS 360, all right? You can create new variables based on existing variables. So if you have a piece of pressure data, for instance, that you're sending up to the cloud, and some of your folks like to look at that in PSI and others like to look at that in bars, you don't have to push both PSI and bars up to the cloud. You can just push one of them and then do a conversion using rule chains right within OCS 360 itself. So that's a kind of common type use that we're actually going to show you how to do today. You can also do some really complex rules or create some really complex rules for creating alarms. That's another thing you can do with it. You can create an automatic alarm response by OCS 360 when an alarm occurs, if you wanted to do that as well. You also can automatically control a variable in reaction to a specific condition. So as variables are being pushed to OCS 360, you could have a rule chain, a piece of rule chain logic that basically detects a specific condition in that variable that's being pushed to the cloud and then reacts to that, maybe even by writing a variable value back down to the controller automatically without having to have human intervention. So there's lots you can do with rule chains. And again, over the months to come, we're going to really cover them in more and more detail. So again, we said that rule chains are a node-based logic language, all right? And so the building blocks of the rule chain are nodes. And there are literally, a few dozen different nodes available for you to use in your rule chain logic. And they're divided into 5 different categories. And we've got the categories there on the screen. So there's the filter category. What's that used for? Well, it can be used for message filtering, alarm filtering, even geofencing. What are the enrichment nodes for? Well, you can manipulate device attributes, customer attributes, that sort of thing. Transformation. Well, you can trigger an email. You can rename or delete variables, all those sorts of things. Okay, why would you want to delete a variable? Well, maybe after you push a variable in to OCS 360, you want to monitor that variable, but then you want to delete it before it actually gets recorded. Maybe you don't want to bother recording that for the 5 years of maximum recording. So that would be a reason to do that, for instance. You've got the action category. You can use that actions to clear alarms, assign alarms, create alarms, control devices. Again, these are all things that would occur without human intervention. You would set up this rule chain ahead of time, and then that action would take place per your prescribed programming of that rule chain. And then there's also flow category of nodes, all right, which allow you to link a customer rule chain to the default rule chain, for instance. So lots of things you can do with rule chains. We're going to show you some relatively simple things today. And again, we'll build your knowledge of these over time. So today's example, we're going to effectively create a new variable based on another variable that's being pushed to OCS 360. Okay, that's what we're going to do today as our example of using a rule chain. So what's happening here is that my device, my example device I've used for all of this entire series, which is an OCS that is pushing data to the cloud. It's a prime unit, and it is basically, I've named it in OCS 360 as the Epoxymatic. So that device has been pushing data to the cloud for weeks now. And one of the variables it's been pushing is called temperature. Now, I typically use the term variables when I'm talking on this podcast, on these live streams. But really, another term for variables is key. So keep that in mind. One of these days, we'll do a glossary comparison of kind of IIoT terms versus traditional PLC terms. But anyway, the Epoxymatic has been pushing a variable called temperature, okay, to OCS 360 for weeks now, and that is expressed in degrees C. That's the format it's been reported in. We could create a rule chain piece of logic, all right, that takes that variable coming in, temperature, and converts it to degrees F instead of C, and stores it in a different variable called temperature F. And that variable isn't one that's being pushed to the cloud directly, it's being created by the rule chain. And it doesn't count towards our number of variables per minute that we are charged for, based on our silver plan, gold plan, platinum plan, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's basically a free variable, if you will. Now, to create this particular function, in other words, to create this new variable that is a converted version of another variable, we're going to use the math function node, which we can find in the action nodes category. So that's what we're going to use for that. And on the screen, all you see still is the root node chain without any changes made. Okay, so when we click on the math function node, automatically its dialog box pulls up, and then we can start configuring it. Okay, we need to assign a name to this node. Okay, I called this one on the screen C to F, okay, because that's basically what it's doing. It's a good idea to turn on the debug mode switch in the upper right-hand corner there. That way we can see this particular variable in action when we go take a look at the device and we look at all the different variables being pushed by that device. This one will be listed along with it. Okay, so we'll see not only temperature, but we'll see this new variable we're creating. Okay, then in the case of the math function block, we need to select what function we're going to be using. And in my case, I'm doing a custom function, which allows me to type a complete expression in. Other options are things like add, subtract, etc. So if I'm just doing a simple add only, I wouldn't have to use the custom function. Then we need to configure the arguments. Okay, what are the arguments in this case? Okay, well, first of all, what's the variable or key that we're having in the expression? Okay, in this case, it represents the variable x in this math function. And the particular key we're looking at is my temperature variable that is being pushed from the epoxymatic. We fill in a default value, which we'll put in as 0, and then we fill in the mathematical expression at the bottom. Now, of course, this is what we need to do for the math function node. So that's what I'm showing you today. So at the bottom there, by the expression label that I've placed on the screen, you can see the particular equation that we're going to be executing, x times 1.8 plus 32. That's the one right there. Okay. Now we're almost done, but not quite. The last couple of things we have to configure in the math function node is we need to configure the result. Okay. So what's the result? Now the type is just message, and the key is the name of the new variable that we're creating. And the original variable that we're using as our basis was called temperature. I've decided to name the resulting new variable that I've created temperature F, and then I need to specify how many digits after the floating point I want this value to be limited to. Okay. All right. And so you can also fill in a description at the bottom if you'd like. And that's really all there is to configuring that particular node. But all we've done is configure the node. We need to put it in the rule chain. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that new node that we've created, and I'll be showing you all this in our live demonstration, don't worry. And it's going to be for a similar but slightly different application. All right, but what we need to do is we need to position the node in the post-telemetry flow area. So currently, if you take a look at that before section of my slide here, after post-telemetry, we go directly to the save time series. That's where everything is saved. So what we're going to do before the save occurs is we're going to insert this node we've just created called math function, which has been named C to F. It's a math function type, and it's named C to F by me. That's going to be inserted into the post-telemetry area before the save time series. And then that success bubble you see on the arrow after the math function, that's just indicating that should occur after a successful implementation of the math function. So that's what things look like before on the rule chain, at least a zoomed in version, and what it looks like after on the rule chain. Okay, so that is kind of walking you through what are rule chains and kind of giving you an idea of how you could implement one to create a new variable based on an existing variable. And now let's go ahead and demonstrate what I showed you in slides with a different variable on the screen so you can see all of the details. Here we are logged into OCS360. Let's explore rule chains. All right, so I'm going to click on rule chains. Here we have our root rule chain that's being shown. Let's click on it. And here's what it looks like. Now mine is not the default because I've added, as I showed on the slides, I've added this math function so I could create a new variable. Okay, I inserted a node that I named C to F, and what this is doing is taking one of the existing variables or keys that is being pushed to OCS360 from my OCS. It's called temperature is the name of that variable, and I'm creating a new variable called temperature F, and I did that by adding this math function in the flow between post telemetry and save time series, okay? And I can tell that's working by going to the devices list, going to my device and clicking on it, and then looking at the latest telemetry and seeing not only temperature, which is being pushed directly by the OCS, but temperature F, which is being created by that rule chain modification directly in OCS 360. And this variable here, temperature F, because it was generated within OCS 360, does not count against my number of variables per minute in terms of what I paid for my plan for OCS 360. Okay, so we have verified that rule chain that I've already put in place here. Now let's go back to the rule chain area, all right, and let's make another change. So I'm going to go back to the root rule chain. And what I'm going to do is something similar. I'm going to insert another math function that is this time going to take another variable that is being pushed by the OCS to OCS 360 called pressure. And that natively is in PSI. And I'm going to create a new variable in bars. Okay, so that's the plan for this modification. So it's going to start out the same way the last one did. I need to find the action node for math. Okay, so I go to the action nodes and I select math function and I drag it out onto my workspace here. All right, so I need to give this node a name. So I'm going to call this PSI to bar. All right, I'll stick with a custom function. I like the way those work. All right. And then source is the data is coming in from a message, but instead of that message being the temperature variable, this is going to be my pressure variable. And that temperature was just the default that they have in there. Okay, so I'm going to type in exactly my variable name. That is my key, which is pressure. I'm going to assign a default value of 0, and then I'm going to type in my expression. Okay, so my expression is going to be, to convert from PSI to bar, my expression is going to be times, and here's a number for you, 0.689475729. All right, so that's what we're doing. We're taking our pressure, which is X, and multiplying by this constant. All right, and the result is going to be in a new variable that we're going to call pressure bar. Okay, and let's go with 4 digits this time. All right, actually, let's do 5 digits. Why not? And then let's hit add. Okay, so we have added this function here, or this node. Now we just have to put it in the proper place in the rule chain. Okay, so I'm going to drag it. And what I want to do is I need to put it in series. So with this other math function. So I'm going to move this from there to here. Okay. And I'm going to make a little bit more space. And I'm going to connect from here to here, but only on success. Okay. And hit add. All right, so now in our post telemetry flow, we have our math function creating a new variable for degrees F, another math function creating a new variable for PSI to bar, and it's right in line with the time series. Now there's one thing I forgot, so let me go in and fix that now, and that is this. I want to go ahead and go back into this node. So I'll hit the edit button. And I want to allow debug mode. That way I can look at live values and it'll show up in my list of telemetry, of the latest telemetry. So I'm going to hit save here, okay, and close. And then I need to hit save here. Okay, so those changes have now been applied. Now let's just check our work by going back to the devices section, selecting our device that's pushing out the pressure variable, going to our latest telemetry, and there it is. Not only do we have pressure, we've also got pressure bar. Now, you probably are pushing your data out once per minute. Okay, so be aware, after you make this change, your new variable is only going to show up after that next transaction has occurred within OCS360. In other words, you may have to wait for up to a minute if you're pushing your data out once per minute for this to show up here, because it needs a new value of pressure before it can actually work on this. Okay, so that wraps up our first exploration of rule chains. And once again, we're going to be taking a look at these for months on end periodically to teach you more and more about how to use them and what they can do for you. Okay, as we wrap up, I want to remind you that you can try out OCS360 for free. So your credit card won't be charged until after 90 days, actually a little bit after that. And you just need to have Seascape 10.1, firmware 17.1 for your Canvas or Prime OCS, and then of course an internet connection with your OCS controller. And that can be wired, wireless, cellular, it really doesn't matter. And of course you'll need an OCS360 subscription, which as I just mentioned, is free for the first 90 days. Now, there are several OCS360 plans to choose from. They primarily vary in terms of the amount of data per minute that each controller can push to the OCS360 cloud. 250 variables per minute for silver, 500 variables per minute for gold, and 1,000 variables per minute for platinum. Don't forget to sign up for OCS training this year. Our customers tell us this is very worthwhile. Even experienced programmers learn something new when they come for training, and it's very economical. So we've got training courses in the second and fourth quarter coming up, so get your calendars ready. Another thing to look at for your calendar are the trade shows that we'll be focusing on this year. And the big one to start the year is in May at Automate in Detroit, the very largest automation show in the United States. So don't miss it, May 12th through 15th. We're going to have lots of great stuff to show off there. I've been excited to be working on that already a couple months in advance. That new trade show setup will be showing off in May. Okay, lots of ways to interact with Horner on our website at hornerautomation.com, on our YouTube channel where you'll find this and hundreds of other videos, as well as on LinkedIn. Okay, we are winding down the February and March months that are OCS 360 months, only one topic left. But hopefully you have learned a lot for the last couple of months. I know I have, just kind of teaching it to you. And our final topic is going to be this, at least the final topic for now. And that is using micro OCS with OCS 360. Wait a minute. I thought only Canvas and Prime supports OCS 360. Well, that's true. Only Canvas and Prime directly support OCS 360. But if you have micro OCSs in your facility and you'd like to push their data up to the cloud, you can install either a Prime controller or a Canvas controller, gather up the data from your micro OCSs and send that to the cloud. And that's the technique that we're going to be showing you next week. So you don't have to swap out all your controllers, don't have to upgrade them all. You can just add a single Prime or single Canvas unit to your system, network it to your micros, and away you go. So that should be a really good topic. I'm looking forward to presenting that one to you next week. Okay, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, don't hesitate to do so. It doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, so until next week, when we talk about getting micro OCS data up to OCS 360, let's all get out there and do us some good.